I have spent over 20 years opening the chests of people who were doing everything right. Men and women who walked their 3 miles a day, skipped the dessert, and never touched a cigarette. Yet there I was, scalpel in hand, looking at a heart that was failing. But here is the secret that keeps me up at night. Often, the damage I saw on that operating table wasn't caused by a poor diet. It wasn't caused by bad genes. It was caused by the very thing sitting in the amber plastic bottles on their nightstands. Pills prescribed with the best intentions, taken faithfully every morning, that were quietly, systematically dismantling their cardiovascular system from the inside out. I'm Dr. Liam Cooper. With over 2 decades of experience as a cardiothoracic surgeon, I've held beating hearts in my hands and felt the literal vibration of a life in the balance. I've seen the invisible side effects that a 7-minute doctor's appointment never has time to uncover. Today we are opening your medicine cabinet together. I'm going to reveal 6 popular medications that millions of people over 60 take every single day. Medications that might be working for your symptoms, but are secretly waging a war against your heart. One of these is a pill I recommended myself for 15 years before the data changed and left me stunned. Another is an over-the-counter staple that increases your stroke risk the moment you swallow it. And the 6th, it's a medication almost no one associates with the heart, yet it can trigger a fatal rhythm in a matter of days. If you are over 60, or if you love someone who is, you cannot afford to scroll past this. Your heart has beaten over 2 billion times for you. Today, we finally learn how to protect it back. If you are over 60 in this country, there is a 1 in 3 chance that your name is on a bottle just like this one. Atorvastatin, rosuvastatin, simvastatin. These are the heavy hitters of the pharmaceutical world. They are designed to do one thing: lower your cholesterol to prevent a heart attack. Let me be incredibly clear as a surgeon. Statins save lives. If you have established heart disease, I have likely prescribed them to you myself. But there is a massive gaping hole in the standard protocol, a hidden tax your heart pays every time you swallow that pill. To understand it, I want you to meet a patient of mine, a 72-year-old retired high school principal named Arthur. Arthur was the definition of sharp. He did the Sunday crossword in pen, he volunteered at the local library, and he walked 3 miles every single morning. He was on a high-dose statin for 5 years. But when he came to my office, Arthur wasn't the man he used to be. He looked gray. He sat down heavily in the chair and told me, "Dr. Cooper, I feel like my battery is at 5% and I can't find the charger." He had bone-deep fatigue. His legs felt like lead weights when he tried to walk. Most frighteningly, his memory was slipping. His wife told me he would stop in the middle of a sentence, lost. His GP told him, "Arthur, you're 72. This is just what happens." I am here to tell you that is a lie. It wasn't aging. It was a biochemical robbery. Here is the science that your 7-minute appointment never covers. Statins work by blocking an enzyme in your liver called HMG-CoA reductase. This sits at the top of a biological highway called the mevalonate pathway. Your doctor wants to block this highway because it's how your body produces LDL cholesterol. The problem, that same highway doesn't just lead to cholesterol. It is the exact same road your body must take to produce a molecule called coenzyme Q10, or CoQ10. Think of CoQ10 as the spark plug for your heart. Every single cell in your heart is packed with mitochondria, tiny power plants that keep the muscle pumping 24 hours a day. CoQ10 is the essential fuel those power plants need to spark into life. When you take a statin, you aren't just lowering your cholesterol, you are effectively cutting the fuel line to your heart's engine. A landmark meta-analysis, which has been replicated dozens of times, shows that statins can drop your CoQ10 blood levels by 30 to 50%. Imagine trying to drive a car with half the spark plugs missing. The engine stutters, the metal grinds. Eventually, the system fails. In Arthur's case, his heart was literally starving for energy. That fatigue wasn't in his head, it was in his cells. Those leg cramps weren't old age. They were his muscles crying out for the ATP energy that CoQ10 helps create. Why hasn't your doctor told you this? It isn't because they are negligent. It's because of how the system is built. CoQ10 is a natural coenzyme. It cannot be patented. There is no billion-dollar big pharma marketing budget behind it. There is no financial incentive for a drug rep to walk into a clinic and teach a doctor about a 30-cent supplement that fixes the side effects of a multi-billion-dollar drug. In my 20 years of surgery, I have seen patients labeled as having heart failure with preserved ejection fraction, a fancy way of saying the heart is stiff and weak, when in reality, they were just severely depleted of the very fuel the heart needs to stay flexible. When I looked at Arthur's blood work, his CoQ10 levels were nearly non-existent. We didn't stop his statin. We just gave his heart its fuel back. We started him on 200 millimolars of a high-quality bioavailable form of CoQ10. Within 6 weeks, Arthur called my office. He wasn't just better. He told me he had finished the Sunday crossword for the first time in a year. The lead weights in his legs had vanished. If you are on a statin, you must ask your doctor one specific question. Should I be supplementing CoQ10 to protect my heart's mitochondria? Don't let them tell you it's optional. For a heart over 60, energy is everything. You are lowering your cholesterol to save your life, but don't starve your heart in the process. We are looking for balance, not depletion. But as dangerous as this fuel theft is, the next medication on my list is even more insidious. It's sitting in 90% of your homes right now, likely in your kitchen cabinet or your purse. You take it for a headache or a sore knee, thinking it's harmless. But for a heart over 60, it's like pouring acid onto your blood vessels. In my 2 decades in the operating room, I've seen countless patients who were terrified of major surgery, yet they wouldn't hesitate to swallow 2 of these little red pills before breakfast. I'm talking about NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. You know them as ibuprofen, naproxen, or diclofenac, common brands like Advil, Aleve, or Motrin. To most people, these are safety drugs. You take them for a stiff lower back, a nagging knee, or a headache. But if you are over 60, I need you to listen very carefully. These are not vitamins. These are potent chemicals that alter your vascular chemistry. Every time you take one to kill the pain, you are potentially putting a hit out on your heart. Let me introduce you to Martha. Martha was 68, a grandmother who lived for her garden. She had moderate arthritis in her hips. For 3 years, she took 400 milliliters of ibuprofen every morning and every night. She thought she was being responsible. She wasn't taking hard painkillers. But Martha started noticing that her ankles were slightly swollen by 5 p.m. She felt a little more winded than usual when she carried the laundry. When she came to see me, her blood pressure, which had been a perfect 120/80 for decades, was sitting at 155/95. Martha wasn't a hypertensive patient. She was a victim of her medicine cabinet. How does a simple pain pill hijack your heart? Your body uses enzymes called COX-1 and COX-2 to create inflammation. NSAIDs block these enzymes to stop the pain. That sounds great, right? Wrong. COX-2 also produces a vital substance called prostacyclin. Think of prostacyclin as the Teflon coating for your blood vessels. Its job is to keep your vessel walls slippery so blood flows easily, to keep the walls flexible so they can expand, and to prevent dangerous clots from forming. When you take an NSAID, you aren't just blocking pain. You are stripping the Teflon coating off your entire cardiovascular system. Without prostacyclin, your blood vessels become sticky and rigid. Simultaneously, NSAIDs tell your kidneys to hold on to sodium and water. Now you have narrower, stiffer pipes and more fluid being pumped through them. It is the perfect recipe for a burst pipe, which in medical terms, we call a stroke or a heart attack. In 2015, the FDA did something rare. They didn't just put a warning on the box. They strengthened a black box warning, their most serious alert. It states that NSAIDs increase the chance of a heart attack or stroke, even in the first few weeks of use. And for someone like Martha, whose arterial walls are already naturally less elastic because she's over 60, that risk doesn't just add up, it multiplies. In my career, I've operated on hearts where the tissue felt crisp and the blood pressure was uncontrollably high, only to find out the patient had been self-medicating with naproxen for years. We call it the silent spike. You don't feel your blood pressure rising 5 or 10 points. You don't feel your kidneys struggling to filter the extra fluid. You just feel the pop when the system can't take it anymore. What did we do for Martha? First, we threw the ibuprofen in the trash. I told her, "Martha, we are trading a sore hip for a working heart. We switched her to a topical NSAID gel. This is a secret many doctors don't share. A gel rubbed directly on the knee or hip provides the same pain relief, but with 90% less absorption into the bloodstream. It stays where it's needed and stays out of her heart and kidneys. We also added high-dose omega-3s, EPA-DHA, and curcumin with piperine. These are nature's anti-inflammatories. They don't block the prostacyclin. They actually support the vascular lining. Within 3 months, Martha's blood pressure dropped back to normal without a single blood pressure pill. Her ankle swelling vanished. Her heart was no longer swimming upstream against its own medication. If you are over 60 and taking an NSAID daily, you are playing a dangerous game of Russian roulette with your blood pressure. My advice? Stop the daily oral pills. Ask your doctor about topical alternatives or evidence-based supplements like turmeric and fish oil. But as dangerous as NSAIDs are for your blood pressure, the next medication on my list is even more deceptive. It's a pill that people take for stomach issues, never realizing it is actually starving their heart of the electrical minerals it needs to keep a steady beat. This one is a silent thief of B12 and magnesium, and it's likely causing those 3 a.m. cramps you've been having. There is a pill that roughly 15% of all adults over 60 take every single day, often for years on end. You might know it as a purple pill, or simply as your heartburn medicine. I'm talking about PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, omeprazole, pantoprazole, lansoprazole. Most people think of these as a simple shield for their stomach. You take it so you can enjoy your coffee or that spicy dinner without the fire in your chest. But in my 20-plus years as a surgeon, I have seen a terrifying trend. People are treating a gatekeeper like an enemy. Your stomach acid isn't a design flaw. It is a biological necessity. And when you shut it off completely, your heart is the first organ to pay the price. Let me tell you about Harold. Harold was 71, a retired engineer. He was a man of logic and precision, but his body was failing him in ways he couldn't calculate. Harold came to see me because he was experiencing flutters in his chest, palpitations that felt like a trapped bird beating its wings against his ribs. He was also plagued by agonizing leg cramps at 3 in the morning. His previous doctor told him he probably just needed to stretch more and that the flutters were just anxiety. But when I looked at Harold's chart, I saw he had been on omeprazole for 12 years. Here is the cardiac reality that stays buried in the medical journals. Your stomach acid is the key that unlocks your food. Without it, you cannot absorb 2 of the most critical nutrients for your heart, vitamin B12 and magnesium. First, let's talk about magnesium. Magnesium is the master regulator of your heart's electrical system. It is responsible for over 300 enzymatic reactions. But for the heart, its job is simple. It keeps the rhythm steady. When your magnesium levels drop, which happens almost inevitably with long-term PPI use, your heart's electrical signals start to misfire. This leads to arrhythmias, palpitations, and that terrifying feeling that your heart is skipping a beat. Harold's magnesium wasn't just low, it was at a level I would call cardiac critical. His 3 a.m. cramps weren't a lack of stretching, they were a systemic deficiency caused by a pill he thought was harmless. But the thievery doesn't stop there. By blocking stomach acid, you also block the absorption of vitamin B12. Why does a heart surgeon care about a B vitamin? Because B12 is the only thing standing between you and a dangerous amino acid called homocysteine. When your B12 is low, homocysteine levels skyrocket. Think of homocysteine as microscopic sandpaper flowing through your blood. It scratches and irritates the delicate lining of your arteries, the endothelium. This irritation triggers your body to patch the scratches with plaque. In a study published in the journal Gut, researchers found that long-term PPI users had B12 levels 30% lower than non-users. We are literally seeing people develop clogged arteries, not because they eat too much steak, but because their heartburn pill has left them with high homocysteine and no way to repair their vessel walls. In Harold's case, his B12 was so low, it was beginning to cause peripheral neuropathy, that tingling and numbness in his feet. He thought he was getting old. In reality, he was being malnourished by his own medication. What was the Dr. Liam Cooper protocol for Harold? We didn't just stop the PPI. You can't do that, or the acid will hit you like a tidal wave. We did a controlled taper. While we slowly reduced his dose, We introduced sublingual methylcobalamin, B12. Why sublingual? Because if his stomach can't absorb it, we need to bypass the stomach and put it directly into the bloodstream through the tissues under the tongue. We also added chelated magnesium, magnesium glycinate. Most cheap drugstore magnesium is magnesium oxide. It's essentially a laxative. It won't help your heart. You need a chelated form that your body can actually use to stabilize those electrical signals. Within 2 months, Harold's bird in the chest was gone. His heart rhythm was rock solid. The 3:00 a.m. cramps, a distant memory. He felt a level of mental clarity he hadn't experienced in a decade because B12 is also fuel for your brain. If you have been on a PPI for more than 6 months, you are likely nutrient depleted. You must ask your doctor, can we check my homocysteine, B12, and magnesium levels? And what is our long-term plan to move away from daily acid suppression? But as quiet as the PPI thief is, the next medication on my list is a wrecking ball. It is a medication that prevents one type of disaster, clots, while potentially causing another, the literal calcification of your heart's valves and arteries. It's a drug that's been around for 70 years, but the way it interacts with your K vitamins is a conversation that is decades overdue. In my 25 years as a surgeon, I have performed over 2,000 open heart surgeries. I have seen things that a CT scan or an X-ray can never truly convey. One of the most difficult things to encounter on the operating table is an artery that feels like a stone pipe. When I try to perform a bypass on a normal artery, the tissue is soft and elastic. It holds a stitch like silk. But when I encounter an artery that has undergone medial calcification, it's like trying to sew into a piece of eggshell. It cracks. It resists. And often, the culprit behind this stone heart is a medication meant to keep your blood thin. I'm talking about Warfarin, Coumadin. Warfarin has been the gold standard for blood thinners since the 1950s. If you have atrial fibrillation, AFib, or a mechanical heart valve, this drug has likely saved you from a catastrophic stroke. I am not here to tell you to stop taking it. That would be a death sentence for many. But I am here to tell you about the vitamin K paradox that almost no one is talking about. Let me introduce you to George. George was 76, a retired military man. He had been on Warfarin for nearly a decade due to a chronic heart rhythm issue. George was meticulous. He checked his blood levels, INR, every single month. He thought he was perfectly protected. But George started developing severe shortness of breath. When we took him into the OR to replace a failing valve, I was stunned. His aortic valve wasn't just worn out. It was a solid mass of calcium. It looked like coral from the bottom of the ocean. How did a blood thinner turn George's heart to stone? Warfarin works by being a vitamin K antagonist. To thin your blood, it blocks vitamin K. But your body doesn't just have one type of vitamin K. It has K1, which handles blood clotting, and K2, which handles calcium distribution. Warfarin is a blind drug. It doesn't just block K1 to keep you from clotting. It also completely shuts down vitamin K2. Why does that matter? Because vitamin K2 is the traffic cop of your cardiovascular system. Its entire job is to activate a protein called matrix GLA protein, MGP. This protein is the only thing standing between your arteries and calcification. K2 grabs calcium out of your blood and escorts it into your bones and teeth where it belongs. When you take Warfarin, you are essentially firing the traffic cop. Without K2, the calcium in your blood has nowhere to go. It begins to drift. It settles into your heart valves. It lodges into your arterial walls. Over years of use, Warfarin can actually accelerate the hardening of your arteries, the very thing we are trying to prevent. A landmark study in the Journal of the American Heart Association found that long-term Warfarin users had significantly higher calcium scores than patients on newer medications. We are effectively trading a short-term clot risk for a long-term stone heart risk. What was my battle plan for George? First, we sat down with his cardiologist. Today, we have a newer class of drugs called DOACs, like Eliquis or Xarelto. These drugs thin the blood without interfering with vitamin K2. They allow the traffic cop to keep working. For George, switching to a newer anticoagulant was like finally allowing his arteries to breathe again. Second, for patients who must stay on Warfarin, we have to be extremely strategic. You cannot simply take a vitamin K supplement, or you will ruin your blood thinning levels. Instead, we focus on coronary artery calcium, CAC, scoring. I believe every person over 60 who has been on a blood thinner for more than 2 years needs this simple, low-radiation CT scan. It tells us exactly how much stone is in your pipes, so we can adjust your treatment before you end up on my operating table. If you are on Warfarin, you need to ask your doctor, Is a newer DOAC safer for my long-term arterial health? And when was the last time we measured my calcium score to see if my arteries are hardening? But as dangerous as stone arteries are, the next medication on my list is perhaps the most heartbreaking. It's a recommendation I made myself for 15 years. I told women to take it for their bones. I told men to take it for their strength. I was practicing the best medicine I knew at the time, and I was wrong. This common supplement, when taken the wrong way, is a direct ticket to a cardiovascular event. This part of the script is the hardest for me to deliver, not because the science is complex, but because it requires me to admit a professional failure. For the first 15 years of my career, I stood in front of patients, specifically women over 60, and I gave them the same advice. To protect your bones from osteoporosis, you must take 1,200 milliliters of calcium every day. I said it confidently. I said it because it was the standard of care. I said it because it felt like common sense. Bones are made of calcium, so we should eat more calcium. But I was practicing medicine based on an incomplete picture. And the data that has emerged since 2010 has forced me to change my practice entirely. Let me tell you about Eleanor. Eleanor was 65, a vibrant woman who loved hiking and stayed incredibly active. After a bone density scan showed the early stages of thinning, osteopenia, her doctor put her on high-dose calcium supplements. Eleanor took them religiously for 3 years. She thought she was building a fortress for her skeleton. What Eleanor didn't know, and what I didn't fully realize back then, was that she was caught in the calcium paradox, the science that stopped me cold. In 2010, the British Medical Journal published a massive meta-analysis of 15 randomized controlled trials involving nearly 12,000 patients. The conclusion was a shockwave to the medical community. Calcium supplementation, without specific cofactors, was associated with a 30% increase in heart attack risk. Why? Because your body is not a simple bucket that you can just pour minerals into. When you swallow a 1,000 milliliter or 1,200 milliliters calcium pill, it causes a spike of calcium in your blood. Your body doesn't know where to put it all at once. If you don't have the keys to unlock your bone tissue, that calcium doesn't go to your hips or your spine. It follows the path of least resistance and settles into the soft tissues. And the softest, most vulnerable tissue in your body is the tunica intima, the inner lining of your heart's arteries. In Eleanor's case, she was faithfully taking her calcium, but she was unknowingly plastering the inside of her coronary arteries. By the time she came to see me for chest pain, her calcium score was off the charts. She didn't have a fatty plaque problem, she had a mineralization problem. We were literally watching her heart turn to stone while she tried to save her bones. Why haven't the guidelines changed everywhere? Because medicine is an ocean liner. It takes a long time to turn. There are billions of dollars in the calcium supplement industry, and it is institutionally embarrassing for major organizations to say, "We were wrong for 20 years. But as a surgeon who sees the physical results of this advice, I cannot stay silent. The Liam Cooper Bone Heart Protocol. If you are over 60 and taking calcium supplements, I want you to stop and reevaluate. Here is how we fix the situation for Eleanor. Food first. I told Eleanor to get her calcium from sardines, with the bones, dark leafy greens, and high-quality dairy. Calcium from food is absorbed slowly, in small amounts, and doesn't cause that dangerous blood spike. The Three Musketeers rule. You should almost never take calcium in isolation. To get calcium into the bone and out of the heart, you need 3 things working together: calcium, vitamin D3, and vitamin K2, MK7. D3 helps you absorb the calcium into the blood. K2 acts as the GPS that tells the calcium to go to the bones and stay out of the arteries. Magnesium balance. Calcium and magnesium are a seesaw. If you take too much calcium, you deplete your magnesium, which, as we discussed earlier, causes heart rhythm issues. Eleanor shifted her focus. We stopped the high-dose pills and started her on a K2 and D3 regimen while focusing on dietary calcium. Within a year, her arterial inflammation markers dropped significantly. She was still protecting her bones, but she was no longer sacrificing her heart to do it. If you are on calcium, ask your doctor, should I be taking K2 and D3 alongside this to protect my arteries? And can we aim for a lower supplemental dose and focus more on my diet? But as common as the calcium mistake is, the 6th medication on my list is the one that truly shocks my patients. It's a medication people take for seasonal issues, sniffles, itching, or even a bad night's sleep. It seems so harmless you can buy it at a gas station, but for a heart over 60, it can be the hidden trigger for a fatal arrhythmia. We have covered cholesterol, pain, acid, and bones. But the final medication on my list is perhaps the most deceptive because it is hiding in plain sight. You don't even need a prescription for it. You can find it at a pharmacy, a grocery store, or even a gas station. I am talking about first-generation antihistamines, specifically diphenhydramine. You likely know it by the brand name Benadryl, but it is also the PM in almost every Tylenol PM or Advil PM sleep aid on the shelf. If you have itchy eyes from allergies, or you've had a few nights of tossing and turning, you might reach for this without a second thought. But for a heart over 60, this simple allergy pill can act like a chemical lightning strike. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah was 69, a retired nurse who was very careful with her health. She started taking an over-the-counter sleep aid containing diphenhydramine because she was having trouble staying asleep. It worked at first, but after 2 weeks, Sarah noticed that her heart would suddenly start racing while she was just sitting on the couch. She felt jittery, and her mouth was constantly dry. One evening, while standing up from her chair, she felt so dizzy that she nearly collapsed. When she came into the clinic, her heart rate was sitting at 110 beats per minute while resting. Sarah wasn't having a panic attack, and she didn't have a new heart condition. She was experiencing anticholinergic toxicity. Why is this so dangerous for you? Diphenhydramine is a dirty drug. It doesn't just block histamine, it also blocks a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. In your brain, acetylcholine handles memory and focus. In your heart, it acts as the brake pedal. It tells your heart to stay calm, slow down, and maintain a steady rhythm. When you take these older antihistamines, you are essentially cutting the brake line. For a young person, the heart can usually handle the extra stress. But for a heart over 60, losing that brake can trigger tachycardia, a dangerously fast heart rate, or even atrial fibrillation. Furthermore, these drugs interfere with the QT interval, that same electrical recharge period we discussed with antidepressants. If your heart takes too long to recharge because of an allergy pill, you are at a significantly higher risk for a fatal arrhythmia. In Sarah's case, the drug was also lingering in her system much longer than it would in a younger person. Because our kidneys and liver slow down as we age, a standard dose can easily become a toxic dose within just a few days. The dizziness she felt wasn't just a spell. It was her blood pressure struggling to keep up with a heart that was racing and inefficient. The Liam Cooper switch. If you are over 60 and dealing with allergies or insomnia, here is how we protected Sarah's heart. The generation shift. For allergies, we moved her to second or third generation antihistamines like loratadine, Claritin, or cetirizine, Zyrtec. These are cleaner drugs. They don't cross the blood-brain barrier easily, and they don't cut the heart's brake line. They provide the relief without the rhythm risk. Addressing the sleep route. For her insomnia, we stopped the PM drugs immediately. We focused on sleep hygiene and low-dose melatonin, under 1 mg, which is a natural hormone that doesn't mess with heart rhythm. Hydration and electrolytes. Because diphenhydramine is so drying, it can cause an electrolyte imbalance. We focused on increasing her intake of potassium and magnesium to reset her heart's electrical floor. Within 48 hours of stopping the antihistamine, Sarah's heart rate returned to a beautiful, steady 68 beats per minute. The jitters vanished. She wasn't aging poorly, she was just over-medicated with a harmless drug. If you are using an over-the-counter sleep aid or an old-school allergy pill, look at the active ingredients. If you see diphenhydramine or doxylamine, put the cap back on and ask your doctor, is there a heart-safe alternative for my allergies or my sleep? We have now walked through all 6 of the silent saboteurs. But having the information is only half the battle. Now I'm going to show you exactly how to take this knowledge into your next doctor's appointment so you can become an advocate for your own heart. We have walked through the hidden corridors of your medicine cabinet today, from the fuel theft of statins to the stone arteries caused by calcium and blood thinners. As a surgeon with over 2 decades in this field, my goal isn't to make you fear medicine. It is to make you the CEO of your own health. The most dangerous words in a doctor's office are, "It's just part of getting older." I am telling you right now, no, it isn't. Before your next appointment, I want you to do one thing. Take all your bottles, put them in a bag and on a piece of paper. Write 3 words at the top. What am I losing? Ask your doctor specifically what nutrients each drug is depleting and what the long-term trade-off is for your heart. If they don't have the time for that 40-minute conversation, keep looking until you find a doctor who does. Your heart has been beating for you every second of your life without ever asking for a break. The least you can do is pay attention now. Dr. Liam Cooper here. Please remember, this information is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Never stop or change a prescribed medication without consulting your physician. If this deep dive helped you see your health in a new light, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and comment below with how many medications you are currently reviewing. Share this with one person you love. It might just be the conversation that saves their life. Take care of your heart, stay curious, and I will see you in the next video.